Thank you, Bruce. That was lovely, and it's good to see you in the sanctuary. Good morning, and welcome to the Treasure Coast Unitarian Universalist Congregation in Stuart, Florida. Today is December 27th, 2020. My name is Judy Clough, and I'll be your worship associate today. We're happy to have Rev Tracie Barrett with us this morning. She's returning to the pulpit. She was here in October and a few other times. She lives in Winter Springs, Florida, and considers herself to be a UU evangelist, sharing the good news about our liberal faith. She served for 3 years as consulting minister for the UU congregation of Lake County. Now she's the minister of ritual and liturgy for Soul Fire, a Unitarian Universalist ministry, an experiential, ever-expansive digital ministry focused on worship and retreat functions rooted in Unitarian Universalist values. She's also pursuing a Doctor of Ministry at United Theological School with a focus on revitalizing congregations. Welcome, Tracie. A big thanks to everyone who helped with the service. Bruce Ruby, our music director, Karen Frank, our Zoom host, and Janet Grote, our backup everything this morning. We will mute everyone to avoid any noise in the background. Please remain muted. We're a welcoming congregation. We welcome everyone, those of all gender identities, ages, races, and backgrounds. Thank you for being with us today. We're holding Zoom services every Sunday at 11 a.m. Announcements are on our Friday online newsletter. If you want to be on our email list to receive the newsletter or to find out more information about us, go to our website, www.tcuuc.org. In the Friday newsletter, there will be a link you can use to join the following Sunday's Zoom service. While you're there, check the link for online giving, or you can mail a check right to the church at 21 Southeast Central Parkway in Stuart, Florida, 34997. There's still time for online donations, just a few days. Thank you. Now I will light the chalice. Aha, all right. At this time of year, as we prepare to turn the page on the calendar, may we take a moment to go within and to find the light that is there. I have lit the chalice to reflect the inner light. O spinner, weaver of our lives, your loom is love. May we who are gathered here be empowered by that love to weave new patterns of truth and justice into a web of life that is strong, beautiful, and everlasting. By Barbara Wells. Now Bruce will play and sing hymn number 224, Let Christmas Come. Since Zoom is out of sync for music, please sing joyfully on your muted devices.
Let Christmas come, its story told. When days are short and winds are cold, let Christmas come, its lovely song. When evening soon and night is long, let Christmas come, its great star glow on quiet city parts of snow. Let Christmas come, its table gleam, love born again, the truth of dreams.
Now we do the affirmation. Bruce will sing and play the second part after we say the first part. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
From all that will be known of stars, let songs of faith and love arise. Let beauty, truth, and good be sung from every land by every tongue. Amen.
Now, Rev Tracie Barrett will share a time for all ages.
Our time for all ages this morning is called A Blessing of Love and Wonder by Lynn Gardner. It was getting dark, and the weary travelers needed a place to sleep. It's almost 70 miles between Nazareth and Bethlehem, and Joseph and Mary were making the long journey that was required of them in order to pay taxes to the Roman Empire. It was a long journey for everyone, but Mary was feeling each mile a bit more than some, as she was about to give birth, and she was, so tired. But there was a blessing. One of their neighbors in Nazareth had offered them a donkey for her to ride on the long trip. Kindness can make any journey a bit easier. The trip to Bethlehem wasn't the only journey they were on. Mary and Joseph were on that exciting, sometimes nerve-wracking journey toward parenthood. It had been 9 months since the angel Gabriel had appeared to Mary, asking her if she would carry this child, this Son of God. Here I am, she had said, let it be with me. And so, with her consent, which is hopefully how all children come to be, Mary was pregnant. And there was another blessing. Her dear, sweet Joseph, who believed her, who had faith in her and in God. Faith can help when times are confusing and difficult. And there in Bethlehem, this young couple was blessed with generosity, a place to stay. They were given space to rest until their baby was born. It wasn't fancy, but it was warm and safe. Out in the fields, there were shepherds watching over their sheep. It is said that angels came announcing that a child was born. Now, I would guess that shepherds don't always feel important. They might not always remember that they matter, especially when they're out in the field at night. But on that night, there was a blessing. The angels came and sang, and they not only felt hope hearing of the birth of this little baby, but they also remembered, at least for that night, that they were each precious. And a new star rose in the heavens, telling of the birth of the one who would bring a message of peace, one who would bring change, one who would be called a king. Far away, wise ones heard of the star. They went to King Herod to tell him that a new king had been born. Herod was jealous and afraid of what a new king might mean, and so he sent them to find the baby. And though the stories say they traveled to find him, there was a blessing. The wise ones felt compassion for this family, and they chose not to tell King Herod what they had seen. And as Jesus was held and rocked and snuggled and fed and sung to, there was a blessing of love and wonder. There they were, All the people and animals gathered around a new baby, caring for him and for one another, resting in that amazing love. Over 2,000 years later, we retell the story of Jesus' birth and of his life and teachings. And there is a blessing, a possibility of a better world. This possibility arises when we remember that we are all connected, when we choose kindness, faith, generosity, when we remember that each one of us matters. The possibility for a better world happens when we practice compassion, when we allow our hearts to be changed by love and wonder. This Christmas and every day, may you be touched by such blessings and share them with all those you meet.
Thank you, Tracy. That was a lovely version. Now it's time for joys and sorrows. I will move a stone in our symbolic river to mark each joy and sorrow. Please keep your joys and sorrows brief. If you want to share, raise your hand and Karen will unmute you. For those whose joys and sorrows are too private to share, know that we will keep you in our hearts. And I'll move a stone for the private joys and sorrows.
As we hold these joys and sorrows, both spoken and those too tender to speak, may we also hold the families, so many families, who have lost loved ones due to this pandemic. Let us hold all those working the front lines and their families as well. As we enter into a time of silence, hear the words of Kendall Gibbons. One of the great things about Christmas is that it is a sturdy holiday. Christmas doesn't wimp out when times are hard. It comes anyway, even if there's hardly any presents, even when there isn't much food to make a feast with, even if you're sad, even if the world around you is at war, even if you're living in fear and danger and oppression, Christmas still comes. And when it comes, Christmas is subversive. Christmas, with its story of an unwed mother and a doubtful father, with its legend of a helpless baby born in a stable who was worshipped by some of the wisest, richest men in the world, with its tale of the child pursued by the deadly wrath of kings who escaped as a refugee to a foreign land far from home. Christmas, with its ancient, enduring summons of peace on earth, goodwill to all people, everywhere. You can't stop a day like that with a little hardship or greed or injustice. It will show up anyway, shining the light of the midnight star into the darkest places of our collective lives. Do not underestimate the power of the manger and the hope it holds. The Christmas song of the angels is not as innocent as it sounds. It has turned the world upside down before, and it still can.
all the stirs of compassion blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Earth holy blows, wings that may free, Spirit of the light, come to me, come to me.
Our reading this morning is by the Reverend Dan Schatz. The people spoke of miracles. They passed rumors about shepherds and angels and a promise of peace. They said a holy light shone all around and that heavenly choirs shouted joy. There were seers, they said, wearing silk garments and carrying kingly gifts, and all of it illuminated by a wondrous star. The people spoke of miracles. But in the night, away from the prophecy and far from legend, an ordinary baby in a makeshift shelter knew nothing at all. Loved and fed, he slept, held gently through the night. The babe in the food trough, a young, terrified mother, a young man who chose to stay with his pregnant fiancée, knowing how it looked to the populace. We're told that this is the family that God chose to place his child with here on earth. Now, on this Christmas weekend, I'm not here to debate the validity or accuracy of the Christmas story in the Bible. Our tradition comes out of Christianity, and on this week we honor and recognize our fourth source, Jewish and Christian teachings which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. So for those of you who might wrestle with this sermon, I ask you to wrestle. There's a joy in that wrestling, because today we're looking past the specific details of the story and going a bit deeper. What is it that the story tells us? How do we apply that to who we are today? So let's think about this Christmas story for a moment. Really think about it. God didn't choose a rich family with all the benefits they could offer. He didn't choose a king. He chose the most imperfect family he could find and said, that's the one. And this isn't the first time in the Bible that we hear of less than perfect, less than ideal people being chosen to do the work. Most of the great prophets viewed themselves as not completely worthy of the work that lay before them. Moses was busy minding his business, tending his father-in-law's flock, when one day a rather, up until that moment, nondescript bush suddenly caught on fire but was not consumed. It was in this moment that Moses was called to his ministry. God wanted him to go to Egypt and tell Pharaoh to release the Jews from captivity. And Moses' response? Who, me? Oh no, anyone but me. I can't speak, I can't do this. Even with all the tools you're giving me, please don't make me do this. Finally, God said that his brother Aaron could go with him. And even after all that, Moses complained a lot. And yet, even in all of that, God still said he was the one chosen to do the work. In the end, he did lead his people out of Egypt into the promised land, but getting to that point, there was a lot of imperfection. Jonah is another imperfect one. Now, I like Jonah. He's my kind of prophet. His book in the Hebrew scriptures is short, only 4 chapters. And I feel like there's a lot we don't get told about Jonah, which makes me like him even more. I'm sure many of us know the story of Jonah through the story of Jonah and the whale. But there's more to it than that. Let me summarize. God told Jonah to go to the people of Nineveh, and Jonah said no. Actually, he didn't as much say no as he showed no. He just up and ran, because somehow he thought that would work. So he boards this ship, and the ship hits really bad seas, and the people on the ship figure out that perhaps someone isn't following instructions from somewhere. And Jonah finally fesses up and has the rest of the sailors do the one thing that Jonah can think of to save their lives. He has them throw him overboard. Now, personally, I think it's because Jonah figured you can't follow a calling if you drown. And so, of course, Jonah gets swallowed by the big fish, aka the whale in the story we heard growing up. Now, being inside a fish in the middle of the sea can give you a lot of time to think and pray. And that's what Jonah did. So the big fish spits him out on land, kind of gross. And God says, so really, I need you to go to Nineveh. And this time Jonah says, begrudgingly, okay. And here's the reason I like Jonah. It's the part of the story I didn't hear as a kid. Jonah preaches to Nineveh about their wicked ways, and they actually repent. They change their ways. So God's pleased, but Jonah isn't. Why? He was promised smiting, and there would be no smiting. So Jonah, in what I can only assume is a deep-rooted personality issue now, goes and has a temper tantrum outside the city. And he eventually calms down after some lesson learning, and we can only assume continues on his way. If ever there was an imperfect person to share the perfection, Jonah is it. Jeremiah is another case of God saying, I have a job for you. And that person going, I'm good. I can't do that. Don't want to do that. Find someone else. Rinse and repeat. Jeremiah is known as one of the major prophets, and yet he doubted himself and his ability to do this great work to which he was called. He didn't think he was perfect or even close to it. I could obviously go on with many stories from the Hebrew scriptures. And even after we read of this family we celebrated a few days ago, there are examples of more imperfect people being chosen to do the work to bring the kingdom of heaven down here to earth. Peter denied even knowing Jesus 3 times and became one of the early church fathers. Paul started out persecuting the early Christians and after a dramatic conversion experience planted new churches throughout the land. Even the letters attributed to Paul show that no one doing the work or answering the call were perfect. The bulk of those letters have at some point Paul saying, please stop doing that. You can do better. You're called to do better, so please do it. Even some of our own prophets and preachers weren't perfect in the pursuit of their work. Forrest Church is one of our best known imperfect ones. He has written wonderful essays and books that have helped reach people and explain Unitarian Universalism, and yet even he had a failing, a case of misconduct that still ripples throughout our movement. So what does that mean for us? We don't have to be perfect. We don't even have to be close to perfect. We need to be willing, even if it's somewhat begrudgingly, as evidenced by the stories in the Hebrew scriptures. We may not even know what we're being willing to do. In the Christmas story in Luke, when the angel came to talk to Mary, he simply said, do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God, and now you will conceive in your womb and bear a son, and you will name him Jesus. And after an understandable response of, what now? And how's that going to work? Mary did respond with this, here am I, the servant of the Lord. Let it be with me according to your word. She didn't know exactly what it all meant, but she was willing to wait through the 9 months of gestation, willing to endure the long travel to Bethlehem, willing to deal with the stares, the whispers, the ostracizing, willing to be considered the other, and willing to set aside her fear. The angel acknowledges that she is afraid, but wants her to be willing anyway. Mary isn't the only one willing. Joseph was willing to stand by his fiancée, to withstand the looks and gossip, willing to marry her anyway, willing to raise this child that he didn't father. Now, before we build him up with this look of perfection, let's remember he wasn't. The book of Matthew tells us that when Joseph found out she was pregnant, he was going to dismiss her quietly. Now, granted, he could have done it publicly, but chose to keep her from public disgrace. So once he settled on this idea and resolved himself to it, the angel came to him and said, Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife. He let Joseph in on the big plan, and Joseph agreed to do it. Again, what does that mean for us? We don't have to know what's going to happen. We don't have to know if we can even see it to fruition. We just need to be willing to do the work we're called to do, willing to reach out and help others. willing to gestate the seed within us that will grow into something bigger than we could ever imagine. It's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be unsure. We just need to be willing to do it anyway. The story doesn't end with just Mary and Joseph and Jesus. There are others in this story who play an important role. They're there to bear witness to the event. The shepherds were minding their business and their sheep in the fields when an angel appeared before them and said, "Do not be afraid, for see, I am bringing you good news of great joy for all the people." Again, we hear someone being told, "Do not be afraid." They were told to go, and they did. They were willing to leave their fields and to go see, to go witness this moment. The shepherds weren't the only ones either. We hear of the wise men coming to track down what the astrological events were telling them. They went to Herod and inquired about the birth of a king. Probably could have been a bit more subtle. Herod, being the reigning king, did not take that well. So he told the wise men to return with information about this king so he could go visit. Yeah, and honor him. Totally what he's going to do. He's not going to kill a rival. Don't be silly. The wise men have a dream that tells them that that might not be a good idea. And so they don't go back to Herod after visiting with the family and bringing them gifts. But they are there to bear witness, to legitimize the claim, and later to save the family. Think about that. Had they done what Herod asked and had they ignored their intuition, their gut, this story could have ended in a completely different way. I'm reminded of the words of Annie Dillard. There is no one but us. There is no one to send, not a clean hand or a pure heart on the face of the earth or in the earth, only us. Unfit, not yet ready, having each of us chosen wrongly, made a false start, yielded to impulse and the tangled comfort of pleasures, and grown exhausted, unable to seek the thread, weak and uninvolved. But there is no one but us. There never has been. There is no one but us. That is the magic of the Christmas story. Any of us can be called to do the most important work. Any of us can be called to witness. Any of us can be called to save another. Being willing to try, being willing to do, being willing to face the fear and set it aside. This is what we learn from this story. This is the miracle of Christmas. The imperfect, the other, the young and old and rich and poor coming together, facing fear and being willing to go forth and do the work that they and we are called to do. Do not be afraid. Amen. May it be so, and blessed be.
It came upon the midnight clear, that glorious song of old, from angels bending near the earth to touch their harps of gold. He spun the earth to all goodwill, from him no news we bring. The world in solemn stillness lay to hear the angels sing. Still through the golden skies they come, with peaceful wings unfurled, and still their heavenly music floats o'er all the weary world. Above, its sad and lonely plains may bend on hovering wind, and ever hold its mellow sounds of blessed But with the woes of war and strife, the world has suffered more. Beneath the angels' strain have rolled 2,000 years of wrong. And we who fight the wars hear not the loves on which they bring. Oh, hush the noise of battle strife, and hear the angels sing. For lo, the days are hasting on, my prophet bards are told, when with the ever-circling years comes round the age of gold, when peace shall over all the earth, the ancient splendors fling, and the whole world give back the song which now the angels sing.
Thank you, Bruce. Our closing words today are by Kate McKenna. They say a story can carry a truth farther than the literal truth. We Unitarians know the value of stories. We know they carry truth. We know they carry more truth than just the plain truth ever can. Maybe we can't believe a virgin gave birth to the Son of God, but we can believe that all births are miracles worthy of celebration and wonder. Maybe we can't believe angels brought revelations, but we can believe truth can be revealed through the actions and words of those who dare to speak it and act it. Maybe we can't believe the angels sang to shepherds, but we can believe that those revelations about life can come to and through even those we think are the most humble. Maybe we can't believe the wise men traveled to see the newborn baby king, but we can believe that we should never be too lofty or think ourselves too clever or too rich to see the wonder and majesty in tiny things. Maybe we can't believe that Jesus brought back the light by redeeming our sins, but we can believe in a leader and a teacher and a prophet who brought and brings illumination to the lives of those who wish to listen. We can believe in the light. Always, we can believe in the light. Maybe we can't believe the Christmas story, but we can believe in it as a story which points to a truth greater than we can possibly imagine. And so here we are, Unitarian Universalists at Christmas, celebrating, and long may we do so. After the postlude, please place yourself into gallery mode and stay with us for coffee hour time. Thank you.